What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about this bad boy right here. That is the Arex Delta Gen 2, or for my Key and Peele fans out there, the Arex Delta Gen 2. So this is kind of like a Archon Type B, had a three-way with an M&P and a SIG P320, and you get the Arex Delta Gen 2. There's some really cool stuff going on in here, and there's a couple things I noticed right off the bat with this thing. One is the presentation on this is extremely natural. It feels very good. It's got great texture. It's got a good trigger out of the box. And this thing is coming in at a solid price for an optics ready compact pistol. Now they do have three versions of this. This is the M, which is their compact version. They have the X, which is a compact slide, but a full size grip. And then they have the L, which is their full size offering. And they come in like black, gray, flat dark earth, and optics ready and not optics ready, depending on what you want. But most of you know me, and if you don't know me, now you're gonna know. Once I saw it in that gray color, I was pretty much gonna buy it, and I actually liked the way that the M felt enough that I bought the L as well. I'm gonna do that in a different video. We will go ahead and talk about the specs on this thing, of course, talk about the range footage, and then give my kind of overall feelings on this $445 optics ready hammer out there, which, like I said, I pretty much liked right out of the box at the store, but I've had that feeling before, and that was with the H&K VP9, where it felt just awesome in the hand of the store. And then I was kind of just like, out on the range. So we'll see if this one turned out any different. And then of course we will talk about anything that I would change, if there is anything I would change. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, turn the bell notification icons on, and give the video a like if at any point you feel that I have deserved it. If you're interested in any of the stuff we're talking about here today, or what's on here like the light or anything, I'll leave links down below for that. Or we're gonna go ahead and get into this Arex Delta Gen 2 right now. All right, let's go ahead and get into the Arex Delta Gen 2 right here. So go ahead and get the main specs out of the way. We'll take a look at what comes in the box, and then we'll get into everything else in detail. So this is the M, this is the compact version. It is 7.1 inches long. It is 4.7 inches tall. It is 1.18 inches wide, a barrel length of 4 inches. And this one with the optics ready setup with a magazine in it is 20.6 ounces with an empty magazine. Talking about the mags, we're gonna get two, wish they had three. One of them, as you can see, is gonna have a +2 extension giving you 17 rounds, and the other one is going to be flush fit should you want to carry this concealed. All right, let's go ahead and take a look real quick at what else comes in the box, which is going to be a basic loading kind of instructional cleaning sheet, and then your actual manual right there, standard lock with it. You're gonna get a decent little cleaning kit with this thing, which isn't bad at all. You're going to get 4 total choices of back straps, and it does come with all of your standardized optic plates and the tools to put those on. So we will go ahead, get this out of the way because nobody else really cares about what else is in the box at this point. And let's get back into this and what is exactly going on here. So from Magwell to Muzzle, let's go ahead and get this thing started. So starting down here at the Magwell, give you guys a good look. You can see it is very nicely, funneled in there. So it has a nice factory kind of funneled magwell on it, which is definitely a big help out there. Little bit of a lip right there. So even if you have bigger hands, it does a really good job of keeping that fleshy part of your hand out of the way for those magazine exchanges, which is nice because some guns are just straight and flat. This does have a little bit of flare to the bottom, kind of like the Gen 5 Glocks do, which is definitely a positive. Interchangeable back straps, just a pin right there. You punch that out, change it to what you want. Coming up, the texture on these, they absolutely nailed it. It's like that Polymer 80 or M&P 2.0 texture. You've got a couple lines that give it some looks. You've got the Arex logo, but that texture is aggressive without being overly aggressive, and just goes all the way around and is everywhere that you're gonna be able to get some skin on this frame to help you control the recoil impulse. Very good area up here in the beaver tail. You can see it is nice and wide right there. Gets a really good section of flesh right there for that recoil impulse control. Moving forward from there, they've done a great job just rounding this off in here. So when you got that nice high grip on here, little bit of a double undercut, or a little bit of an undercut, not a double undercut, excuse me. and even up into the magazine release has just been nicely rounded off. However, having this thing as angular and as small as it is caused a little bit of problem out there trying to run it more quickly. Moving forward, we got some just straight line texture right there underneath, and then it kind of just angles right off into the light right there, but it still is big enough to where you're not going to have, say, like an issue I have with the M&P 2.0 where I start to kind of slide over the trigger guard. Well done there. We'll come back to the trigger in a minute once we're done with everything else and do those pull tests that you're waiting for. So moving forward, you got your standard takedown levers. You got 2 roll pins, very kind of polymer 80 looking accelerator cuts with that texture in there. Well done there. It feels great out there on the range. Standard couple multi-slot Picatinny sized rails right there. Do have an ambidextrous slide stop, slide release, and the magazine release is ambidextrous as well. So getting up into the slide, we do have the striker indicator right there. It does protrude out the rear as the trigger is being pulled. We have a standard black rear sight with anti-glare serrations throughout these parts. Moving forward, we've got your optic mounting plate on there. This has the RMR on it. We'll come back to a little bit more on the plates here in a minute. Got very nice, kind of triangularly designed serrations, and they are plenty to work with. There's a lot of grip there, not going to have any problems, but at the same time, you'll start to notice all the lines in this thing. The light will kind of really show off how much kind of sectioning down and nosing down, making this thing very snag-free in its design. Moving forward, you'll notice we have an internal extractor on this one. We do have a loaded chamber indicator across the top right there, across the hood. And then standard looking barrel. Everything else is going to look pretty standard. Takedown lever, all that stuff's going to look very standard. And a single white dot non-night sight in the front. And it does have anti-glare serrations as well. These sights are interchangeable with the standard SIG P320 sights. So if you've got a set of sights you like, you can slap them on here as long as they're for a 320. Let's talk about the breakdown on here. It's very standard. You can clear it out, pull the trigger, break it down. Or, according to Arex, there is a default safety in here. Should you forget to remove a round from the chamber, you can break it down that way. Obviously, you don't want to rely on that, but because the safety in here, it will not allow, the striker will come off the steer surface, but it will not be allowed to go through the breech face, and then you'll find out you've made a big mistake and you left a round on the chamber. I would not do that. I would not trust that. I would not say to do that, but that is a built-in safety. Otherwise, you're going to break this down the standard way you would, say, like a Glock or something like that. You're going to clear it out, pull the trigger, pull it back slightly, pull down on both sides of that, push it slightly forward, and it rocks off. Go ahead and talk about the the slide real quick. Very standard looking barrel. Everybody is going to recognize this from the striker fired world. Nothing crazy going on there. Standard recoil spring guide rod assembly. Up in the slide, you can see wearing as usual for having a few, just over a couple hundred, probably right at a few hundred rounds right now. Wearing as it should. You can see that internal extractor right in here, which is a very familiar design with multiple brands. H&K has an internal extractor on some things, and so do other brands. Your striker assembly and all that good stuff in there. Let's talk about the frame, because there is definitely some cool stuff going on inside the frame here. Very standard looking striker fired setup here. Locking block, trigger bar, trigger mechanism back here. So this is a chassis system like the P320s. The difference is, instead of having the easy pin that comes out, you have to drive 2 roll pins, and then the whole chassis with a serial number comes out, and you can change grip modules. So it's a chassis design, it's just not the easiest chassis design to swap out. As far as how this trigger works, you're going to recognize some things in here that are very familiar with other striker fired setups. Let's go ahead and talk about the slide and what we got going on up here. You'll notice right here, that is your striker block safety right there. And then you have your striker lug surface right here. So those are going to obviously correspond to the parts that disconnect those in here. This is the vertical extension of the trigger bar like on a Glock, which is going to disconnect that safety up in the slide, which is the striker block safety. As you pull that trigger to the rear, that moves, disengages that, as the striker lug is contacted on the rear of the sear surface right here. As you pull the trigger to the rear, it drops down just like that. I'll show you guys one more time, a little bit closer. You will see it drop down. As it drops down, striker goes forward, slide reciprocates. You'll see a little metal button right there. The section that protrudes on the slide pushes that in as it reciprocates, and you will see the sear surface pop back up and then grab the striker and reset the trigger. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and get this thing back together, and we are going to do some pull tests on this thing to show you guys what it is pulling at. Now, it was a little gritty up front. It has definitely cleaned up now that it's got some rounds and has been cleaned a few times. So I want to say it's going to be pulling right around 5 pounds, and I do pull low on the trigger shoe because I try to get my finger low because leverage, right? So we are, God, it's like 5 pounds and 2 ounces right there, which is about where I expected it to be. And we'll do one more and we're probably going to be right in the same area. It's been very consistent, so almost right at 5 pounds on that way. So talking about this trigger, so it's got an interesting feel because it's kind of a triangular slope to it, like you can see right there. The trigger shoe safety feels very positive. A decent amount of take up on it, but it's got a clean, hard break here. So you hit the wall, the tiniest bit of creep, break, and then a reset. So at the wall, almost an immediate break. Well done on that trigger. It feels good. You can run this thing plenty fast out there, and it doesn't have that kind of squishy, rolly break, which I am just not a huge fan of at all. So if you see, I've got this LAS concealment over here. This is the Saya 2.0. This is currently set tension-wise for my Glock Gen 5 45, and you'll be able to see here, it locks in. Everything is good to go. It's not coming out. If you want it a little bit tighter, you can adjust the tension on it. There is a little bit, just a little bit, you can kind of see right there, a little bit of movement since the Arex here is a little bit thinner and a little bit smaller than the Glock 45 or 19. It still works in that holster. It fit in my Safariland holster. You may have to adjust tension. I can't say it's going to fit in every holster, but it did fit in several of mine. Talking about the plate here for the Optic, I'm going to bring in my full size here. You can see there are 4 screws that hold the Optic plate. It's got some mounting posts there, and then I'll turn this upside down so you can actually see right there on the bottom. You'll see there's actually like reverse nuts. Reverse nuts. So there are 2 nuts underneath here that you can thread into, and it gives a lot more thread than some other mounting platforms for your optics. They are polymer, but there's plenty of thread in there. There's plenty of surface in here underneath that plate is grabbing onto. Overall, I don't see probably 99.9% of people having any issues with the mounting surface on there, the way that thing is set up right now. All right, let's go ahead and talk about range, performance, price, my overall feelings about this thing, and is there anything I would change on this having a few hundred rounds through it? Well, as you can tell from the specs, not bad at all for a $445 optics ready hammer for you out there. So this thing has really clean lines. You can see everything that's kind of designed in here is just very much almost suited to concealed carry. A couple different things out on the range. This thing is a little bit snappy, so it's a little thinner, a little bit kind of smaller than like a Glock 19, although I did find out it actually fits very nicely in a Glock 19 holster. You just got to tighten up the tension a little bit. It did fit in my Safariland holsters as well, which was kind of nice. You just got to make sure that your ALS adjustment or whatever retention you're using is set to the appropriate tension since it is slightly smaller. So on the range, this thing was very natural to get used to. I had a few issues with the magazine exchanges right away because I get out there and I try to go faster than I should when I'm using something new, and I have some flubs here and there. But overall, once I got used to it, started to do very well. And then that integrated magwell was definitely a help out there because I was trying to go faster than I probably should have with something that was new. The trigger is solid. It feels good. It's definitely getting better. A little bit crunchy at first, but it has definitely smoothed out. Now the overall tactile feel of that trigger, not bad at all. The recoil impulse of this thing is definitely a little bit more noticeable than some things, but after that recoil impulse, it just comes right back down to where it needs to be. I don't notice myself coming a little bit left or a little bit right or anything. Once that round goes off, it is just straight right down back where it needs to be. Definitely got a less aggressive grip angle than say like a Glock, and it's right in there with something like an M&P. The texture is absolutely great on it, and they have done a really good job as far as all the reference point. It's very much like a Polymer 80 rough texture. It's got like the Polymer 80 kind of marks up here in the front, those accelerator cuts with the reference points on them. They just did a really good job designing this frame overall. And like I said, it's literally like they took really cool parts out of a SIG with that whole kind of modularity in there, although we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then of course it has a look like that Archon Type B, which is a pretty cool looking setup, but a very expensive setup, especially compared to this. Well, let's talk about a couple of those things that could be positives or negatives, or maybe just a flat out wash. And let's go to the first one, the optics plates. So they are polymer. They've got that metal insert underneath, and then the screws come in through the top of your optic. I don't know. I'm probably not going to be beating on this thing hard enough for that plate to break. Is it as strong as steel? I think we can all say without a doubt, no, it's not. It really is going to depend on what you're going to use this thing. Are you going to be bashing this off of tables and 4x4s out on the range like Aaron Cowan doing testing on optics? I'm probably not going to be doing that. 99.99% of everybody out there to infinity is probably not going to be doing that. So I don't think that's going to be a serious issue. And I'm sure people are going to be coming out with aftermarket plates for these things anyways. Now, as far as the rest of this thing overall design-wise, I think they absolutely nailed it, except for two kind of minor things. The first one being it is that chassis system like the SIG, but make it a little easier so you don't have to go punching pins. I mean, I know engineers can do it. I'm not an engineer, but I know they can. Instead of having those roll pins in there, make it a little bit easier, kind of like the P320, to where you can swap those grip modules a little bit easier. And I know that's a big ask and it may raise the price, but it's just something that was running around in my head. Now, the only other thing is definitely that magazine release. I mean, just take a good look again at that thing. Look how small that thing is compared to my finger. And it's just the way that it's designed, it's great. I really do like how they've just sectioned everything off and made it all smooth. The problem is I've missed that thing so many times out there on the range. It's really small. It's a little bit slick, and just kind of the positioning of how they angled it makes me slip right off the thing. So I would say that's one thing maybe that could be a little bit better, but I'm really nitpicking at that point. Now, as far as it goes overall, for 445 bucks, which is what I bought it for at the store, optics ready, the way it comes with the mags it comes with and everything, I think that's an exceptional value, especially for the way it performed out there on the range. Like I said, in the store, when I saw this thing, got my hands on it, did a couple press outs, pulled that trigger a few times, I instantly liked it. But I've had that experience before with the VP9. Then when I got to the range, I was kind of like, meh. Whereas with this one, I was a little bit happier with how it performed, even though it was a tiny bit snappier than some things out there, because it's a little smaller and a little bit lighter. It does fit in a lot of Glock holsters that I already have. Double check yours. The only thing that won't fit is though, if you have something like a sidecar design, the mags are not gonna fit because they're much thinner than the Glock mags are. Now, speaking of those mags, they're like 35 bucks for extra mags, and it comes with two. So, Arex, if you're hearing me, 3. Bring it with 3, please, come on. 3 mags. Everybody should be giving you 3 mags or something these days. That's just my opinion. But let's be realistic. 3 mags is where everything should be. Well, that's what I have for you all today. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the Arex Delta Gen 2. If you guys are into anything you saw here, I'll leave links down below for you. And definitely let me know if you have any experience with the Arex, whether it's the Delta Gen 1 or the Gen 2. Let me know down below, or if you are interested. I'm really curious to know why, because this is imported. It's the first time coming out with this model in the States recently, but it definitely left an impression on me. You guys get out there and have some fun on the range. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, and I will see you guys on the next one.